It's a free market. Come on, shippers and receivers. It's a free market. How does it feel, assholes? How does it feel, brokers? Now it's your turn to bid against each other and fucking starve. Y'all, I just read the most ridiculous thing just now. So Transportation Nation just put out their final piece, or I think it's their final piece, on the interview they did with the CEO of 3PL. And their excuse on why it's a bad idea for broker transparency is the most ridiculous excuse I have ever heard. Stay tuned. Alright, I'm going to do this kind of the old school way. Whether y'all think it's boring or not, I don't care. Y'all just need to just hear this, okay? So, this comes from Transportation Nation. I'll leave a link down below if y'all want to read it, but I'm just going to freaking read it, alright? Anyway, it says the head of the largest association representing the third-party logistics companies is not backing down to those pushing for full rate transparency in the shipper-broker-carrier relationship and revealing why he believes they should be careful what they wish for. Remember that part. Be careful what they wish for. Goes on to say, Robert Voltman, CEO of the 1,700 member Transportation Intermediate Association, TIA, has been watching with keen interest the recent uprising among many small business truckers furious over low freight rates. Then he goes on to say, after President Donald Trump recently expressed his beliefs that the brokers were price gouging independent contractors amid the COVID-19 national emergency, Voltman says that he, along with his members, quickly realized they were in an unprecedented battle. Then he goes on to quote, "We're certainly taking it serious." And then Voltman, whose TIA membership is comprised of a wide range of brokerage, including the biggest players in the space, have come under intense criticism during the pandemic as freight rates have plummeted. And yes, they have been. If you go to every freaking trucking YouTube channel out there that covers this kind of shit, that's what they've been talking about, including myself here and there. Anyway, the furor sparked an almost 3-week protest in Washington, D.C., as you guys know about. Anyway, yada, yada, yada. We'll skip over that, and you guys can read over that part. The controversy and D.C. protests has events led to the United States Department of Transportation opening the investigation, as you all know. In part 1, which they have a link to in the description, he goes on to dismiss such allegations. He goes on saying, "We've done nothing. Let the Justice Department investigate. They won't find anything." Then he goes on to say, at the core of the outrage directed at 3PLs in recent weeks is the lack of disclosure of the freight rates paid by the shipper to the broker and the widespread practice deployed by many brokers requiring carriers to waive their rights to know. Critics argue brokers are seeking to hide transaction records in order to conceal profit margins of as much as 60%, despite the fact brokers are required to comply with the now famous 49 CFR 371.3 provisions. And then he continued to argue that since deregulation in the 1980s, shippers are not under price transparency regulation 371.3 now needs to be modernized because it essentially places an undue burden on brokers. Oh, holy fuck. An undue burden on brokers. And then he goes on saying, why? Because shippers insist on these non-disclosure provisions to be included in their contracts with 3PLs. Brokers have little choice but to agree to these terms. Yo, y'all see something wrong here? Please tell me somebody else sees this out here. Please tell me I'm not the crazy one. Brokers have a problem agreeing to the terms. They're kind of forced to do it, but yet truckers have to agree to the broker's terms. We're forced to do it. They're in the same boat as us. How does it feel? Then he goes on to say, and that's going to hurt them a hell of a lot. And if the carrier requests too few transaction records, TIA advises members to allow them to do so during normal business hours at the broker's headquarters. Critics argue that is simply a way of skirting the regulations, but Voltman warns that the carriers should think twice before choosing to exercise their right under 371.3 or face the real prospect of losing business. Then he openly admits what happens what happens is if a carrier doesn't waive their right under 371, the broker can't use that carrier with freight in which a shipper has put a non-disclosure provision in. I have no idea what the percentage of that is. Let's say it's 50% of shippers with these non-disclosure agreements. We already don't have enough freight to serve the owner-operators, and now you take the 50% of the freight we do have away from them. That's going to hurt them a hell of a lot. Transportation Nation asks, is this true? Do shippers really demand brokers to refuse to book loads with carriers that have asked to view the transaction records? In pursuit of the answer, they go to turn to Gail Rutkowski. Guys, please don't judge me on that one. It goes on to say Rutkowski is in the executive director of the National Shippers Strategic Transportation Council, which is the Shippers Association for Transportation and Logistics Professionals who manage freight across all modes. And Gail goes on to say, and I quote, if a shipper found out the broker was disclosing their transaction to any carrier, they would refer to their confidentiality clause in the contract and say that the broker is in jeopardy. They've broken that contract clause. While she says such demands would not be carrier specific, she was clear that shippers expect brokers to abide by the contractual agreements. She goes on to say, I don't want my rates disclosed to anybody for any reason. What I agree to pay the broker or the carrier is nobody's business but ours. She goes on to say, we'll go out of business, so will the owner operators. OIDA is asking Congress to step in and require brokers to provide, you all know that, the electronic copy of the load carrier transaction delivery, blah, blah, blah. I talked about that earlier in my live feed today. So it goes on to say, what if this happens? What if everybody in the OIDA ends up putting in their paper to waive their rights? Voltman and Rutkowski agree it would be the death of the brokerage industry and many small business truckers. If Congress were to come in and say 371 now is mandatory, shippers will stop using brokers. That means all owner-operators are going to have to field their own sales force, will go out of business. If the brokerage part of the industry disappears, so will the owner-operators. Then they go on to say the marketplace would go away, and honestly, I think it would be the death of owner-operators as well, just not the broker, just as well as the brokerage industry. If the brokers go, the owner-operators are going to go, because shippers aren't going to have the time to contract with every individual owner-operator that's out there. Here's my thoughts on all this. J.B. Hunt, Werner, Schneider, all these big companies do not have enough drivers. Just because they're major companies, they have a lot of drivers, they don't have the top quality drivers to cover all the freight. Even after the COVID-19 thing is over, they can't cover all the freight. In fact, this is what I want to get either. If the ATA pushed this whole thing saying, oh, well, there's a driver shortage, there's not a driver shortage. If they can't cover all the freight, if all the owner operators, there's a driver shortage in the mega carriers maybe, which that kind of says, hey, they can't cover this freight. Owner operators will not go out of business. Brokers need to step up because we own you. We own the shippers. We haul everything. And the shippers can't survive without us. So, you know what? Coca-Cola and Pepsi was a bad example. They have their own people to do shit, right? Johnson & Johnson, I don't fucking know about them. But regardless, it's a free market. Why don't you guys just, why the fuck do we have to disclose all our information about what, when we're getting paid? It's a free market. Come on, shippers and receivers. It's a free market. How does it feel, assholes? How does it feel, brokers? Now it's your turn to bid against each other and fucking starve. It's time to make the fucking broker transparency legal. Make you guys pay for breaking the law. We have to pay. It's your turn. It's time that these shippers and receivers, these brokers, they start having to go through the same exact shit that they put us through. They make us bid against each other, so why don't they get to bid against each other? It's a free market. Guys, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and let me know what you think. You're all fucking hilarious, 3PL. Shippers, brokers, receivers. You know what? Thank you for this interview, Transportation Nation. Thank you for putting this out there. I hope everybody watches this, and I hope other people make videos like this. It's a free market.